Welcome back everyone, it is Eric from Rare Candy, and today we're going to be breaking down my current deck list for the new Garchomp EX coming out in Paradox Rift. And honestly, this is the exact type of deck I'd love to see more of in the game. No disrespect to a deck like Excalibur, but this is a true Stage 2 deck where all of our key Pokemon are evolutions, just the way the good Lord Arceus intended. So for this list, we'll be pairing Garchomp up with the Lucario from Brilliant Stars, but I've also been experimenting with a number of different fighting attackers. So at the end of this video, if you're still hungry for some more Garchomp content, I actually dropped a bonus deck list over on Patreon showing off some other ways we could build around this card. So feel free to go check that out if you want to get some bonus content and help support this channel in the process. But with that being said, be sure to smack that like button to feed the YouTube algorithm, and let's break down this Garchomp deck list. Up first, we have 3 copies of Gible. There's not too much to this card, but I do think this is probably the best of the Gibles that we have access to right now. But of course, Garchomp EX is going to be the star of the show here. Garchomp here is a new Terra Pokemon EX, so it does have that bench protection built right into the card. And the main attack we're going to be using is going to be this first one for a single fighting energy, this 160, and you attach up to 3 basic fighting energies from your discard pile to your bench Pokemon in any way that you like. 160 for a single energy is already a pretty solid energy to damage ratio, but this really has great synergy with our Lucarios since it is going to be discarding its energy. And even though we're not going to use it quite as frequently, this second attack also isn't that bad either. We do have to discard 2 energy attached to Garchomp, but then we get to do 120 to one of our opponent's Pokemon. So yeah, we can pick off low HP Pokemon on the bench, but also the math here between both these attacks actually works out really well, especially if you're trying to clean up KOs against Pokemon V-Star. But the reason we're choosing to play fighting Pokemon with Garchomp, other than the fact that our energy cost sort of demands it, is because it is unfortunately weak to lightning. So if we do go against a Miraidon deck or any deck that's playing lightning attackers, we do need a way to be able to answer them. And like I said, the way we're choosing to do that with this list is with Lucario from Brilliant Stars. And I really do like how this fixes the prize trade, because if your opponent does take out a Garchomp with one of these multi-prize lightning Pokemon, we can answer them with a single prize fighting Pokemon of our own to keep the prize trade back in our favor. But Lucario's ability allows you to search your deck for a basic fighting energy, you attach it to Lucario, but you do take 2 damage counters. And then its attack for 2 fighting energy has you discard all of your fighting energy attached to it, and it does 10 plus 60 for each energy we discarded. So if we use Garchomp to take 3 energy and put them all on Lucario, we're actually threatening 310 damage on the following turn with your attachment for turn and this ability. So you guys can see the loop we're trying to get into. We're trying to nuke something with Lucario, re-accelerate the energy with Garchomp, and keep that loop going throughout the game. We're also playing Burrell as our draw engine of the deck for that Industrious Incisors ability. Burrell is sort of nice to not only Iono-proof you, but also it does help supplement your draw power when we're using these search supporters that don't let us see too many cards in a turn. We have our Radiant Greninja, which is a perfect partner for Garchomp, since we can use that Concealed Cards ability to be able to pitch away fighting energy to accelerate with Garchomp and see some additional cards in a turn. We also have a copy of Manaphy to protect our bench from different bench sniping attacks. And our final Pokemon is going to be another new card coming out in Paradox Rift, and that's going to be Jirachi. Its ability prevents the effects of attacks from basic Pokemon done to our bench Pokemon. So this is going to give us protection against attacks like Lost Mine on Sableye, Yogaloop on Medicham V, even the Cresselia that we see in Gardevoir decks, which is pretty important since all of our pre-evolutions here are very susceptible to these attacks. But one of the things I like most about Garchomp EX's new type is the fact that it can abuse Hurte as its engine to get going. Since we can grab a water Pokemon and an item, we can actually just grab our Garchomp EX plus a rare candy both at the same time. So for that reason, Hurte is going to be the supporter we're going to lean the most heavily on with this deck. But with that being said, Hurte doesn't always allow us to see a lot of cards in a turn, so we're also playing 3 copies of Iono, both as an early game draw supporter for us that doesn't force us to discard cards like Professor's Research, but also as a late game disruption card that is kind of one-sided since we have the Burrell to refill our hand size, even if both players are getting only a few cards. And the only other supporter we're playing is just 2 copies of Boss's Orders just to be able to switch our opponent's active with one of their benched Pokemon. And Garchomp does sort of allow us to get away with playing the slightly lower count of boss just because we have a kind of decent sniping attack we can use to clean up knockouts and not be quite as reliant on playing a supporter to do so. Right now, the stadium I'm playing in this deck is going to be Path to the Peak to of course shut off the abilities on Rulebox Pokemon. I know this will shut off our own Radiant Greninja, but after the first few turns of the game, we're not quite as reliant on it anymore. But I will say right now, the new Paradox Rift format is kind of a big question mark. So it is a little bit unclear what decks we actually sort of need to be teching against. So this stadium I think could change, but just by looking at the pre-Paradox Rift format, Path definitely seems like a good fit. But heading on over to our item cards, we have 4 copies of Ultra Ball, and we are a deck that doesn't mind this discarding effect since we can play down our hand to a low hand size to use Burrell, and of course we can toss away fighting energy to accelerate with our Garchomps. From there, we have 4 copies of Nest Ball to find our basic Pokemon. Truth be told, I would prefer to play Level Ball in the deck, but unfortunately Radiant Greninja won't be searchable then. So as a result, I think we're sort of forced into playing Nest Ball. Another new card, or sort of new card, that we're getting in Paradox Rift is the return of Counter Catcher, so we can only play it when we are behind on prizes, but then we switch one of our opponent's bench Pokemon with their active. So it's a boss's orders if we're behind on prizes, and as an item card, which means we can actually grab this with Irida on the exact turn that we might want to play it, and is another reason we are playing the lower boss's orders count. And then from there, 3 copies of Rare Candy. We're not playing Gabites as you guys can see, so we're using this to skip that middle evolution and go straight into our Garchomps. We have a copy of Switch in the deck, which might look a little bit weird since Garchomp does have free retreat, but the barrel still has a heavy retreat cost, and sometimes after we attack with Lucario, we might need to switch it out of the active spot to get back into a Garchomp. For that same reason, we're also playing an Escape Rope just to give us a little bit of flexibility over which effect that we might want, since Escape Rope will force our opponent to also switch. Next up from there, we have 2 copies of Super Odd, which will let us get some energy and Pokemon back into our deck. And speaking of recovery options, we also do have a copy of Pal Pad to be able to get 2 supporter cards back from our discard pile into our deck. We're not playing a very high count of supporters here, so Pal Pad will just make sure we have enough to carry us through the game. We have a single copy of Battle VIP Pass, which might look a little bit odd because this is a card we can only play on turn 1, but since we are playing Irida, it makes it a lot easier to just grab this card on the exact turn we might want to use it. We have a Hisuian Heavy Ball, which can help fish some of our basic Pokemon out of the prize cards. As you can see, we don't have a particularly thick line of any of our Pokemon in the deck, and we also have various one-of Pokemon too. So I think Heavy Ball slots in really perfectly here, especially again because we have Irida to be able to use it on the turn that we want to. And our final trainer card is just 1 copy of Energy Search. So you could just play an extra fighting energy if you wanted to, but if we don't have energy in hand, we actually don't have a way to get one out of our deck with Irida otherwise. And speaking of energy cards, to round out our deck list today, we have 10 copies of basic fighting energy. So that's where I'm going to be at right now with the Garchomp EX Lucario deck. And I've got to say, I'm really rooting for this deck to be good. This is my exact type of playstyle in the Pokemon TCG. It's still a little unclear what the Paradox Rift format is going to be looking like, but if nothing else, I think at least for the moment, Garchomp is still the most promising new Stage 2 that we're going to be getting in this set. But I definitely want to hear from you guys today. What do you think about this deck list? Is there anything you would change? Do you think Lucario is even the best partner for Garchomp? Let me know your full thoughts down below in the comment section. But if you guys did enjoy today's content, as always, remember to smack that like button for me. And if you're feeling a little extra generous, you can always become a patron at patreon.com/rarecandytcg or pick up some merch at rarecandytcg.com. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.